So again, what we're going to be doing is they've the students here, they've watched your video on interfaith friendship, and so each of them have they all have a question that they've come prepared to ask you about that video. And I always love seeing and hearing, reading new kind of concepts or frameworks for understanding interfaith dialogue, interreligious peace building. And so friendship is I think, very apt. It's a very good kind of model to use. We talk a lot about interreligious hospitality in this course. Use language like honoring, respect, things like that. And so this concept of friendship, I think, is a very interesting one for all of us to explore. So. Yeah, so I'll just call on anybody. You can just kind of indicate if you have a question that you want to ask. And so I'm here really to moderate this discussion among all of you. And I'm going to try and not get in the way and stay in the background as much as I can. But this is really for you, Safi, and Brad, to answer questions from students. So which student has the first question? Austin, you go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Kaskas.
Hi.
In your discussion with Brad, you clearly have read Christian material, Jewish material, and understand those narratives, those stories. Do you have any specific guidelines that you would put to a non-Muslim to appreciate the Islamic story and integrate it into their thought world to develop friendships with Muslims? Thank you.
Yes, I do. There are two ways to learn about Islam, at least two ways. One of the two ways is for you to read the Quran. Leave other materials aside. Read a good translation of the Quran, and you might want to read my own translation. It took years for me to do it. And it is as faithful to the Arabic original as possible. And this is what the peer review told me. Or you can sit with a Muslim that you trust, but then if you learn Islam from him, you're learning his understanding of Islam. Keep that in mind. To understand Islam for yourself, you need to go to the Quran and read for yourself and try to understand for yourself. Now, if you have any questions after you read the Quran, you can use outside sources, ask friends, ask various imams from mosques in your town, but take their opinion not as a final truth, but take their opinion as their opinion. Still, make up your own mind. I teach young Muslims to think critically. It's very important for me for people to think critically. I said at one time, if my son comes to me and says, "Dad, I decided God exists." Of course, I'm a believer and I believe God exists. I will ask him, why did you do that? What convinced you? I want him to have good reasons to prove it. It's not good enough for someone to make a statement. That statement has to be deep down in your heart and logical in your mind. So your heart and your mind are synchronized together and your behavior will reflect it. So the Quran is your main source. Try to think critically. Go to outside sources, but keep critical eyes, and then make up your own mind. And I'm available to you anytime you want. You can catch me on my account on Facebook. I will be glad to answer any question.
Let me just add something to that, if I could. As an outsider who's learned to read the Quran in Safi's translation, here's what I noticed. I noticed that I brought my own lenses to the text. And so if my lens is that, like, I'm going to read this literally, from the eyes of someone who's suspicious of Islam, then I'm going to see the text in a certain way that may be unhelpful. And so I had to deliberately put on lenses that we're going to have lenses anyway. It's good to know that you have them instead of not know. So then I thought, well, if I'm going to wear deliberate lenses, what would be the approach in? And so for me, one of them was, I thought any Muslim who picks up this scripture to faithfully read it will have also been praying their prayers 5 times a day, at least. And the opening line of the prayer is, in the name of God, the merciful, God, the all-merciful, God, the especially merciful. So if you allow that to be, you understand that's a very thick, very good clarifying lens for everything you read there. And then again, it's really helpful that we have a Muslim scholar who's translated the Quran and asked, how does he see it? And what I learned from Safi was an overarching theme of the Quran, which has to do with God is looking for people who freely worship God. Yes. And that's such an important theme in the Quran, but I would have not seen that on my own. And so I'm grateful to have these double lenses of reading it through those daily prayers, the lens of the prayers, and then reading it with a friend in ways that are probably more helpful than my suspicious literalist lenses that I might have brought otherwise.
Yeah, very good. And I think also one of the things to keep in mind is for those of us who know Christianity well, we know the diversity within Christianity. We know, the good, bad, and the ugly. And so there's that sense of, understanding whenever you're engaging another religion, but engaging Islam or Judaism or whatever. As Safi says, if you talk to an imam, then you're going to get that person's opinion on Islam. And so you do need to engage them critically. In the same way that if you talk to a pastor from, a conservative Baptist church versus, United Church of Canada or whatever, you're going to get different views as well. And so that's kind of the other side in terms of what Brad was saying, in terms of what we would consider to be hermeneutics or exegeting the text. On the other hand, speaking to somebody as well, you're going to get that type of diversity. And so that's important to keep in mind, I think, too. It does remind me as well, again, not to hijack everything, but I mean, it does remind me, I when I was listening to viewing the video on interfaith friendship, there was this understanding, it'll be in a later module in our course with Scott Alexander, but this understanding of holy envy. So when we talk about Islam and Christianity and holy envy being this understanding that we individually can't embody everything that is great about even our own religion, whether it's Christianity or Islam. And we might find this in another religion that's accentuated in positive ways that we want to adopt for ourselves. So for example, the prayer life of Muslims praying 5 times a day, that's admirable and it's very difficult to do. And so there's this holy envy. It doesn't mean that it isn't or can't be within Christianity. It just means that it's perhaps accentuated elsewhere, and we can adopt that for ourselves as well. But that understanding the holy envy, it's from Christer Stendahl, and you'll see it in a later video, but he has 2 other rules for religious understanding that I think are helpful when speaking to, for example, a Muslim imam. And so 2 other principles is when you are trying to understand another religion, you should ask the adherents of that religion and not its enemies. And the second one is don't compare your best with their worst. And so those are good kind of principles to have in mind as well, I think. So.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Anybody else have another question for either Safi or Brad. Ben, go ahead.
Hey, Safi, so glad that you're doing well.
Thank you. Thank you.
We first spoke about a year and a half ago, and I don't know that you would remember this, but you introduced me to Naeem in Pakistan.
Yes.
And he promotes your book quite a bit, speaks very highly of you. I don't know that you've ever met him in person, but another very good man, has a lot to say about interfaith dialogue. My question is about interfaith dialogue. You were talking about in your 8 principles. I've heard a lot about interfaith dialogue. I've never heard somebody say, hey, we need to go beyond that. So you started talking about the importance of interfaith. I think you used the word cooperation.
Yes.
But I really just wanted to hear some examples of what that might look like to you. What is interfaith, maybe going beyond interfaith dialogue, what is interfaith cooperation? And if I could add a second question to that, maybe an easier question to answer, what is one thing that a follower of Jesus could do to honor his Muslim friend?
Well, if you remember, I also cited some verses in the conversation with Brad. I'm gonna mention one of them, which is 5:48. 5:48 says, we have assigned each of you a law and a way of life. So God is telling me that he, on purpose, gave Jews their own laws, gave Christians their laws, and gave Muslims their laws. It's not like you all have to obey the same law that I gave to Moses. It's not like that. There is a progression there. If God had wanted, he's saying clearly, in Arabic, it says, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ. God is talking about himself, but he's saying if God had wanted, he could have made all of you a single community. That means he didn't want it. He didn't want to make us a single community. But instead, he is testing you by means of what he has revealed to you. He revealed to each one of these communities of faith a path. They should follow it. They shouldn't just sign a declaration, say, yes, we accept all this. No, follow it means practicing it. Hence is my idea. We need not to just talk or get to know each other or engage each other, but also live together. And this is the essence of pluralism. When I accept you as you are, I'm not approaching you to convert you. I'm not approaching you to try to understand your weaknesses and strength so I can attack or show you that mine is better than yours. I'm approaching you because I want you to be my neighbor and I want to love you. So engagement here has a different dimension. Engagement means I share with you my joy, my sadness. I share with you when I'm sick, and I come to your help when you're sick. Remember, Jesus said, I was sick and you didn't visit me. I was hungry and you didn't feed me. He gave us a roadmap of what we need to do to engage each other. All we have to do is follow this roadmap. Look, there is nothing that Jesus left out. Seriously, to make the long story short, following Jesus for a Christian or for someone who believes in Jesus will give him a complete way of life. All religion are sitting on a tripod. That tripod is to believe in God, loving neighbor, and trying to be the best we can in serving others, serving our community, serving our country, serving other human beings, serving Earth as the only planet that we know of today that's fit for human habitation. God made it so beautiful for us. Engaging each other is to work together to cut pollution, to make it greener. All these good things, in my opinion, should be the essence of Islam. That lead us, you didn't ask this, but I'm going to add it. This lead us to understand that Islam should not be rituals like any imam will teach you. The 5 pillars of Islam are there. I believe in them. I'm a practicing Muslim. Actually, in few minutes, my first prayer, which is Fajr prayer, will be due. And I will do it as soon as the meeting is over, because I have like an hour or so window of opportunity to pray it on time. But that doesn't make me a good Muslim. What makes me a good Muslim is to wake up before the time of prayer, make sure I had an alarm set in order to talk to you. You're my neighbor. Loving you is being there available for you when it is necessary for me to communicate all this. This is engaging you, you know? This is a case in point. Did I answer your question? Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that the verse in the Quran where it says that God made us different so that we can get to know each other. That was, you know, that really it sticks out to me, and I think one of the things that can happen is we fall into this provincialism where we're like we think that we are right and everybody else is wrong, and so our differences become weaponized in a way that we say the way that I am different means that those who are different than us are rivals, and yet I think that a better way, and what this verse in the Quran is saying, is that our differences mean that we are complementary, that we're each lacking something that the other has, because we can't embody the entire cosmos in one person. All that is good, that's, you know, it's obviously very, very challenging. We fail every day to do that, and those around us offer us something, and we offer them something, and so these differences are a means for a link for cooperation. We're complementary to each other. We add something to each other, and our differences aren't there for aggravating rivalry and competition with each other. And I think we fall into that trap sometimes of thinking that. Yeah.
Andrew, may
Yeah.
I add something to what you said?
For sure.
That verse, I didn't read in its entirety. That verse still have, so compete in doing what is good. How can it be clearer to any Muslim that what he should be doing, the purpose of his life is to serve others? God is telling him, on purpose, I created you different on purpose. I gave you different religions on purpose. So compete in doing what is good. You will all return to God, and he will clarify these matters about which you have differed or differed. I mean, yes, I know you believe in a triune God, and I don't. So what? I'm worshiping God, and you're worshiping God. It's not my job, according to this verse, to investigate. Well, what God are you worshiping? How do you define God? God is the creator, period. You know, and he's one in my definition and yours, period. So let's compete in what is good. Competing in what is good is building a better government, being a better neighbor, you know, taking care of you when you need someone to take care of you, and you take care of me. So living those principles will make us better human beings regardless of religion. That's basically what I believe. This is my religion.
Yeah.
This is Islam as I understand it.
That's great. Another question for either Safi or Brad or both. Indicate if you have a question. Yeah, Trish, go ahead.
Hi, I'm wondering, talking about diversity, just looking at the diversity within the Christian community, between, say, a North American Western Christian versus a Middle Eastern Christian, and maybe how they might read the Bible differently? And does, aside from them using Allah, do they read it in such a different way that maybe is less polarizing between Christians and Muslims in the Middle East?
Is the question, can they read it in a different way?
Do they understand it in a different way compared to the way that, say, Christians might read the Bible in the West? And does that affect the friendship between Muslims?
Yes. I hate to tell you this, but it's the truth. Neither Muslims read the Bible, nor Christians read the Quran. Few do, but Christians, we're talking about millions of people, don't do that. Millions of Christians don't even read the Bible, let alone Muslims reading the Bible. If I call what I do a ministry, then my ministry will be to expose Jesus of the Gospels to Muslims. They know Jesus in the Quran. He's mentioned many times, many more times than Muhammad is mentioned, but that doesn't make any difference. They know Jesus of the Quran. I want them to know Jesus of the Gospels. They don't know that Jesus. They know that Jesus is the Word of God, is the Spirit of God. They know Jesus was born miraculously, died miraculously, is in heaven right now, alive. But they don't know the details of his life. So my ministry is to expose Jesus of the Gospels to Muslims and Jesus of the Quran to Christians, because neither party know what I'm talking about. I took time to read the Bible, and I wrote a book about it, the Quran with the references to the Bible. I found thousands of verses from the Bible that have the same meaning as verses from the Quran. And I thought this is one way to entice Christians and Muslims to read each other and read about each other faith. All these are individual attempts. The more people who will adopt these ideas and try to encourage the other to know more about them, the better. If we want to live together, we have to know each other. If we don't know each other, we are opening the door to the Islamophobes and to the Muslim fanatics who believe Christians are their rivals and their enemies. And they mix between colonialists who oppressed them in the past or oppressed their grandfathers and their fathers and Christians of today. It did not help that President Bush in the United States, before he went to Iraq, said, we're on a crusade. That doesn't help at all. He used a key word that tells Muslim, here come the crusaders again. They want to take over your land and kill you and kick you out of your land. So all these idiosyncrasies we need to overcome. Well, actually, they're facts of history. We need to read history in order to be sensitive about historical facts so we won't repeat mistakes. We need to encourage our neighbors, whether they're Muslim or Christians, to read the Quran, to know more about it. And it's very crucial to choose a translation of the Quran. For instance, Saudi Arabia has a translation of the Quran called the Noble Quran. If you read it, the first page will offend you. So you want to put it aside. And millions of copies of that Noble Quran were distributed in Canada and the United States and Europe. Millions. I can't afford to distribute millions of my own translation, not even thousands. So you need to choose a translation that's not fanatic, that's not offensive, that's not twisting what God is saying to insert their own idiosyncrasies and their own prejudice. Once you find a copy like this, and I truly recommend my translation, once you find a translation like this, then go ahead and read it for yourself. It's self-explanatory, it's clear, and it's not offensive at all to anybody. It try to gather people together. It try to, God look at us as a team, as one team. So basically, this is what I can tell you. People, unfortunately, I cannot specifically say what Christians need to do when they're reading the Quran, because not many Christians read the Quran. I don't, I mean, those who read it, if they have any question, will hear about it. I post something new on Facebook every day, and I answer a lot of questions of people about the Quran and about the Bible. So, I mean, I'm open to answer questions.
Let me jump in.
Huh?
Let me jump in just for a moment too.
Yeah,
part of what I heard in Trish's question was, even when Christians read the Bible, you've got a range of views about the Bible, but also in your answer, I heard that, you know, when Muslims read the Quran, you know, they have in-house disagreements about interpretation as well. And of course they do. If you have the difference between how you're reading it versus how the Saudis who translated the Noble Quran. So yeah, just as in Christianity, my reading of the Bible is as different as it's hard to imagine how differently I read it from some of the other Christian scholars. Well, that's true. That's true in any religion. It's true in Islam as well. And so you're going to have, you know, the violent fundamentalists in both religions reading their respective books in a particular way that justifies their hostility. And you're going to have people who are committed to peacemaking, like Safi and I, and we'll read our own scriptures in a particular way. And this seems to be common to all religions. You'll see it also in Hinduism, Buddhism, you name it.
I think one of the things too, just kind of following up on Trish's question, and you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, Trish, but what I'm hearing in the question is kind of more, I guess, the difference between so Christians reading the Bible, say in the United States, post 9/11, rampant Islamophobia, and so you're reading the Bible, and you have a particular lens that dictates how you view Muslims, versus, say, in Palestine, where you have Christians and Muslims together. They're neighbors, a lot of them are friends, they know each other, and Christians are reading the Bible as well, but perhaps differently. And a lot of it is the proximity to Christians and Muslims together as neighbors, as friends, versus in the States, where there's this kind of divide between the two, and they're seen as you know, the Middle East. We talked about George Bush and Iraq and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's a whole different context for reading the Bible and the lens that we come to the Bible with. And so particularly with Christians and reading the Bible, that would be different in those two contexts because of, again, the proximity of Christians and Muslims together.
That's why the working together, that's why working together on projects works so well, because we're humanizing someone who's committed to the same kind of help. So, you know, you'll let's say in the work in relief and development work, when Christians and Muslims are not competing to help the people, when they are forced to work together in a case where there's dire needs, you begin to sense the camaraderie and of what you're doing together, and that you have a shared purpose in helping humankind in the name of God. And what happens there is you build trust. It's very hard to build trust with someone you haven't met.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we even discussed that a little bit in our in another course that I'm teaching this semester, Practical Nonviolence and Peace Building, for those of you who are in that, but talking about shared action, right? So you have a shared action, and you have two groups who are both investing yourselves in a single purpose, and so through that you do have that mutual cooperation, you do have trust building, relationship building. because of that proximity to each other. Okay, so moving on then, another question, Derek, yeah, go ahead.
Good day, Safi. God bless you. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to find the right way to ask this, but I'm sure that, you know, in your conversations you come across a lot of ignorance, you know, both in people from another faith or even people in your own faith who disagree with you very much. And I guess whenever we see something that's different than what we've always thought, then we have a choice, you know, to either hang on to our ignorance even harder, or maybe to let go of it a little bit. And you know, you mentioned that you answer a lot of questions on Facebook, which is very brave, because I think that's a hard place to do that. But it's, in your experience, what are the things that cause people to open up and actually change their minds instead of closing their minds further?
Yes. To be very frank with you, I'm going to borrow from my experience on Facebook, since you mentioned it also. Many evangelicals whom are friends, they don't necessarily trust me, but we know each other. When I start writing those ideas on Facebook, they did not respond. They basically watched what I'm doing. They wanted to see, am I speaking to them one way and speaking to Muslims the other way? Am I trying to lure them into something or fool them about something, or look what I'm not? Or am I truly a believer in what I'm saying? I've been on Facebook now for over 13 years, maybe 14 or 15 years. And those people, after 3 or 4 years of watching, came out and told me what they were doing, and told me that we believe that you are truly a peacemaker, but you're one among many who try to fool us. It'll be interesting for you to know that on my page, you can never tell who is the Muslim and who is the Christian. The language we developed, the dialogue language we developed, is a new language that speaks about believing in God and loving the neighbor. That language is unique. So doesn't matter who's speaking it. You know, I was born a Muslim. I did not necessarily choose to be a Muslim until I became old enough to understand what that is. But there's some people who never thought about the religion they were born with, and to them, this is theirs. So they have to defend it, you know? And there is this conversion thing that Muslims are obsessed with, and Christians understand the Great Commission to be go and convert people instead of go and make disciples. There is a huge difference in my own understanding of what Jesus said about this. Yes, I believe in the Great Commission. I believe he sent everybody to go and make disciples. Making disciples is tell others through your example to live like I taught you to live. I spent years teaching you. Go and teach others what I taught you. This is making disciples. Go and convert people to a religion is a losing proposition for me. I don't like it. I don't adopt it. I don't participate in it. And I try to tell this to Muslims and to Christians. God is not running a competition between Jesus and Muhammad to see who has more convert. He's not going to declare a winner on the day of judgment. The only winners on the day of judgment are the servants among us. Those are the winners. those who follow the examples or the best the others have to offer, those who serve the others, those who are not trying to abuse others or huge problem, or worship themselves, thinking they're right and everybody should follow what they're doing, or those who are working toward conformity. Everybody should be the same. I'll give you an example. In the Quran, God says, "Inna ad-deena 'inda Allah al-Islam." Deen, which is, I translate as a way of life. Others translate as a religion. The true religion for God is Islam. If I use Islam here as a noun, then I made only the follower of that religion acceptable to God. So it will be a must that we go and convert others because we love them. But when you translate the word Islam as a noun/verb, is action-oriented noun, which is submission to God's will, submission to the purpose God created us for. Then that submission become a way of life for us and for many, many, many people who believe in God, but not necessarily believe in the message of Muhammad. Let me give you a definition of what how God defined Islam. In other words, when I'm trying to tell you Islam is a action-oriented noun, I'm not trying to invent something new, but I'm trying to share a verse from the Quran. I'll read it in English for you. It says, "Say," God is telling Muhammad to say, "It is revealed to me that your God is but one God. Will you be submissive to him?" In Arabic, فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ? The word Muslimun is a plural of Muslim. So if you believe that God is one, you're a Muslim, regardless what you call yourself. In the eyes of God, you're one who is attempting to submit to his will. So this definition, it makes me reject all other definitions that have to do with rituals. I don't like the Pharisees of the gospel, and I don't like the fanatics of Islam. I don't necessarily define Islam by rituals. I define it by intellectually what's in your mind and what you're trying to attempt. And that's also from the Quran. God says in the Quran, we make our messages clear to people who reflect on them. This is 10:24. Who reflect on them, not those who take them blindly and accept some interpreter who lived 1,000 years ago interpretation and try to follow blindly what he's saying. Unless it makes sense to me, I don't believe in it. This was one of the main rules I followed when I was doing my translation. If I don't understand a verse logically, I cannot present it to non-Muslims. So some verses took years, literally years for me to feel satisfied with the way I translated them. So again, we need to think about what we claim to believe, because unless we understand it, accept it, and practice it, it doesn't count. So this is basically the basis of all ignorance. All ignorance comes from being fanatical about an idea. I'm right and everybody else is wrong. My religion is better than yours. I understand God better than you do. Allah is not God. So what? Allah is what he called himself in the Quran. Does it mean the creator? Yes, it does. Then it is God. So where did God in Hebrew or Aramaic call himself God? Doesn't exist, you know? So in my original Arabic that I still have, that the Quran still cite, God called himself Allah. So I'm using an original message, an original word, but what matters is what it means. It means creator. So I use it because I worship my creator. I worship the creator of the universe. If we strip words from their cultural aspects and go back to their essence, to what they meant to be, then I think we'll be much closer to each other. You know, it's like the word love. On Facebook, a few days ago, I tried to ask a person who teach Syriac, which is the Northern Aramaic, that Jesus spoke. What did Jesus say? Did he say agape, which is Greek, for love? The guy said no. Mahabba is actual love, and rahm is the love that Jesus talked about. So Jesus never uttered the word agape. And here we're ready to maybe wage war against other communities because they don't call the love of God agape. So once you take that cultural meaning from those words, because there is no absolute truth. The absolute truth is only with God. We are only human beings. Our understanding is relevant and is important, but is limited. Once we realize how limited we are, we should be glad that God sent people to explain to us his message. Like Jesus was a living example of what God is trying to tell us. Just follow him. You know, the Quran, as far as I'm concerned, is sealing the meaning of all messages. So if I reflect on it for a lifetime, will not be enough. I'll have to even go beyond that in order and I'm doing that. And new meaning is revealed to me as I go, as our knowledge of the universe, which is also created by God, is expanding. My knowledge of the Quran is expanding. They're by the same author, the universe and the Quran. So the more I understand one, the more I understand the other. I mean, I went beyond the question you asked. I hope you're satisfied with the answer.
I want to jump in with a couple of quick thoughts. One is that was the best interpretation of the Great Commission I've ever heard. And, you know, I've been studying this a long time. And so I'd love to get a transcript of that. Second, one thing I noticed that was implicit in your answer that I want to make explicit that would be helpful to Christians. We are invited and required to bring our conscience to our reading of the scripture. So often Christians have like, well, here's a story of genocide. I better just believe what it says and turn my conscience off. Well, that's not reflecting. And I hear you calling us to reflect enough so that that whatever our reading is, we're not called to turn off our reason. We're not called to turn off our morality. We're not called to turn off the voice of our conscience in it. We need to keep reflecting so that we can pass through it. I want to be watchful of the time because of Safi's energy, but also the prayer time.
Yep.
But that's all I had to say about that.
Yep. No, that's great.
Brad, actually, my energy is 100%. I'm drawing energy from the students, their question, your presence there, and meeting Andrew. Seriously, I feel tremendously well. So if I get tired, I'll let you know. But I love the conversation. It's great. I think we had a dream and we're realizing it, and Andrew is making it possible.
Thanks, Safi. So another question then for Safi. Yeah, go ahead, Joy.
for being with us, Safi.
Thank you.
I'm really curious. I'm curious about forgiveness is a primary theme in Christianity, and we get a lot of that from our understanding of Christ. And I'm curious how is that similar in Islam? How is that different? How is the idea of forgiveness different or similar?
Can you define the primary theme of Christianity? What is the purpose of Christianity? What does Christianity teach? We're not saying what Jesus teach. What does Christianity teach? The doctrine.
Well, that's
in your mind.
question.
Let me help you. Let me help you. In my own mind.
Okay.
In my own mind.
Okay.
Reconciliation to God is the main theme of Christianity. God wanted to reconcile human beings who have a fallen nature back to himself. And he knows on their own they cannot do it. He sent his only begotten son to die for our sins and to fulfill the law, but to die for our sins so we can be saved. Do you agree, Brad, with this definition?
With some nuances, yes, but that would be a standard, yep.
Yes.
Reconciliation, definitely
average.
through Christ. Yep.
I'm talking about average. I'm not talking about a specific understanding. I'm saying what millions of Christians will agree on.
I'd say that's very fair.
Yes. Salvation is the purpose, and reconciliation to God is the reason for Jesus coming and being incarnated into a human being to save us. That's what the Christian. Okay. The Muslim approach is much simpler. The Muslim approach says we have a perfect nature. God created us with the ability to choose and put us on earth, because before he sent us to earth, he gathered all of us. That's what the Quran says. He gathered all of us and asked us, am I not your Lord and your creator? We said, yes, we bear witness that you are our God and creator. He said, now I'm going to send you on your own to see if you're going to still recognize me as your creator. And see, this is the first step. The second step, we don't believe in the original sin. We don't believe that Satan talked Eve into eating from the forbidden fruit. Eve is not mentioned in that story except as a side player. Satan talked Adam to eat a forbidden fruit, and he thought about it and realized for the first time he can choose. God told him not to approach that tree. He thought about it and chose for the first time to exercise his ability to choose, and ate some and gave Eve some. Then he immediately realized he disobeyed God, and he immediately started asking for forgiveness. God at that time explained to Adam that you can choose on your own. I'm going to send you to earth to exercise that freedom of choice and send him down there. So Muslims believe there is no original sin. It was a way God taught Adam that he has the ability to choose, because Adam didn't exercise this ability to choose before. That was God's way to teach him. On earth, we are here to exercise our freedom to choose. If we choose to worship God, we will be with him in heaven. If we choose not to worship God, that means we're worshiping our own egos. Then we are away from God, and that's hell. If we worship God, that would lead us to serve others, because it'll get us closer to God. And that's the essence of why we exist on earth. If we worship our own egos, then we use others, we abuse them, we climb on them. That will keep us away. The higher we get climbing on other people, the further away from God we are. So our own salvation is in our own hands, so to speak. Each one is responsible for his own deeds. But no one, the Quran says, can make it to heaven to be with God eternally on their own. We only make it with the grace of God. It's a gift that God give us. If we prove on earth that we are serious about loving God and loving neighbor. So don't take these two commandments easily. They are the foundation of every message to us from God, as far as I'm concerned. This is my belief. So the foundations are different. One says we have a falling nature. The other says we have a perfect nature. One says we sin all the time and we cannot help but to sin. The other say, no, we have a choice. The choice is ours. And we have an intellect. God gave us consciousness and gave us an intellect. That gave this to Adam. Adam, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, and what I understand from the Quran, is not the first humanoids to live on earth. He's the first Homo sapien. He's the first one with an intellect, with consciousness. He can realize that he exists. The minute any creature can realize he exists, he has consciousness. And Adam was the first to have consciousness, intellect, and the ability to choose. And these are weapons that God gave us. We call them human nature, and put us on earth. This innate nature, in Arabic called fitra. We all have it. We all born with it. We all have the ability to lean toward believing in God. That's why we always searching and seeking, because it's built in. It's built in. So we have an innate nature that's equal with everybody. We have an ability to choose, and we need to use our intellect to choose God. And if we try to choose him and prove it through serving neighbors, then we will spend eternity with him in heaven, in the kingdom. That's the kingdom that I just described. This is the difference between the two.
Well, we need to explore this more sometime, Safi, because I'm struck by that the differences also are amplified by distance. In other words, it seems to me there's much more overlap in Eastern Christianity and the Syrian fathers with Islam, because there was much more, it's much more integrated. The Eastern Christians don't believe in original sin either, right? That's more of a Latin thing. So one day we'll have to explore that and just see how even geographically, the closer Christianity and Islam were, the closer theologically they were too. And probably because they were rubbing shoulders and having these conversations, versus somebody of another language that you never meet face to face. And every time there's an intersection of these faiths, there also begins to be a more common understandings, although I won't minimize the differences, but just to say the differences are greater when you have a greater distance. And it's a really good reason to get together to have conversations like this.
What you're saying, Brad, is absolutely relevant. But keep in mind that before Nicaea, that means for 325 years, Christians didn't have those doctrines. Doctrines started with Nicaea, Athanasius and Arius, the conflict about the nature of Jesus. But anyway, then Christianity became Hellenized with Constantine. The Hellenization of the religion drew a wedge, a huge separation between Eastern Christians and Rome and Western Christian Catholicism. We need to explore this a whole lot more. We cannot just go over it lightly like this. But yes, Eastern Christianity and Islam are much closer than Catholicism and Islam, or Protestantism, which went even further with doctrine than Orthodox Christianity. Yes, we can do that. We can even do some research and compare points if you want in a separate meeting.
Yep.
Yes.
Looks like there's a lot to talk about here that we could talk about, but and I feel bad shutting down the meeting now that I know that Safi is gaining a lot of energy from it, but we are past our hour, and so I do need to end. But before we do, I have one question. I like to ask anybody who's heavily involved in interfaith dialogue and interreligious peace building. It's a simple question, but I find a challenging question sometimes to answer, to kind of pinpoint this. But what do you think is really the ultimate goal of interfaith dialogue? So like the ultimate goal. So I find that kind of answering that or defining that it will reflect in the way that the engagement takes place. And so it can't be, for me anyway, it can't be proselytization, it can't be converting. I don't think it's just learning about another religion, just kind of having the head knowledge of another religion. There's got to be something more there. So what are we doing this for? What's the ultimate goal, do you think, of interreligious peace-building interfaith dialogue? Safi, do you want to answer? Yeah.
The ultimate question is, would you allow me to serve you? You and I are created by the same God. We are on the same planet. We both are human beings. The blood that runs in our veins is the same color. We're going to face, we both believe in a day of judgment. Until we get there, would you allow me to serve you, please? I want to be your neighbor. I want to be your friend. So this is the ultimate question. If the other allow me to serve them, that means they're accepting me the way I am. And my statement is telling them, I accept them the way they are. If we accept each other the way we are, without any hidden agendas, then we have peace on earth, which is the essence of what Jesus was trying to do, I think, in my own mind, through studying his teaching and his principles. Yeah. So it's very simple. It's a humanity at its best. And that's the essence of our existence, you know?
And I see that
our Creator, we're trying to live up to your expectations. We are able to honor you, lift up your name, and love each other. These are the goals of being here on earth.
Mm-hmm. And I see even that concept of, and that action, of course, of serving others in that framework of interreligious hospitality, that host-guest dynamic. It's serving each other, and it's not that one is always the host and one is always the guest. They oscillate. There, it depends on the context, but there's that action of serving each other that we see in hospitality as a framework for understanding interfaith engagement. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we'll end it there then. So thank you, Safi. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, everybody, for participating and for asking your questions. And so have a good rest of the day, rest of the night.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Ciao. Great to see you.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad. Thank you.
Love you. Bye-bye.
You.
Bye-bye.